Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grayson. This is the KMG show for Tuesday, March the 16th, 2021. Remember feminism? Remember when it was an unstoppable juggernaut? It was going to transform the world irrevocably. Feminism ran into a roadblock. That is to say that women don't exist anymore and men don't exist anymore. They're social constructions. Actually, they do exist, but they don't at the same time. It's more of the Schrodinger's cat logic of the progressive. Here's a curious story from back in 2014. Time magazine includes feminist in poll of words to ban. This is from PBS. Author Katie Steinmetz provided this rationale for choosing feminist in a blurb on the poll. You have nothing against feminism itself, but when did it become a thing that every celebrity had to state their position on whether this word applies to them, like some politician declaring a party? Let's stick to the issues and quit throwing this label around like ticker tape at a Susan B. Anthony parade. Anna Merlin took offense to this and said, yes, why does everyone have to talk about feminism? Why can't we just be feminists quietly at home or very late at night when everyone's sleeping, or like in our teeny tiniest voices, or in a soundproof hyperbaric chamber, maybe, where it won't bother anyone? Katie Steinmetz responded, please see the blurb in context. The inclusion is responding to trends in the media, not feminism itself. A thing that every celebrity had to state their position on. You mean like pronouns? Or you mean on their gender or gender expression? You see how antiquated feminism has become? What hath feminism wrought? Actual misogyny. Women regarding their bodies with disgust and hatred. And here is the cover story about Elliot, formerly Ellen Page, and it's written by, wait for it, one Katie Steinmetz. And Katie Steinmetz is, what does she write about? Oh, actor and activist Laverne Cox, we need to change power. And just a whole bunch of stuff about alphabet people, and especially trans. This cover story informs us that Elliot Page is ready for this moment. Now, the first pictures we saw of Elliot, formerly Ellen Page, it seemed as if this person was channeling Brad Pitt, but now it looks as if this person is channeling a 12-year-old emo from the 1990s. Elliot Page doesn't remember how long he had been asking, but he does remember the acute feeling of triumph when around age 9, he was finally allowed to cut his hair short. I felt like a boy, Page says. I wanted to be a boy. I would ask my mom if I could be someday. Yes, I'm sure that absolutely happened. Growing up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and here we go again, blame Canada. Page visualized himself as a boy in imaginary games, freed from the discomfort of how other people saw him as a girl. After the haircut, strangers finally started perceiving him the way he saw himself, and it felt both right and exciting. Oh, I see. Back in grade 3, the then Ellen Page got a short haircut. So everyone started to say, oh, I thought that Ellen Page was a girl, but actually Ellen Page is a boy. That never happened. But it appears that Elliot Page is still stuck in gender stereotypes. So long hair equals girl, short hair equals boy. I don't know. That's problematic at best. And hateful at worst. The joy was short-lived. Of course it was. Months later, Page got his first break, landing a part as a daughter. What? Wait, so he was a boy, but then he was playing a daughter in a Canadian mining family in the TV movie Pit Pony. How does that work? He wore a wig for the film, and when Pit Pony became a TV show, he grew his hair out again. I became a professional actor at the age of 10, Page says, and pursuing that passion came with a difficult compromise. Of course, I had to look a certain way. Isn't it remarkable how so many people who get involved in acting or the fashion industry at a young age, as children, if you will, become lesbians or male homosexuals or trans people? I'm sure that's just a coincidence. There could be nothing possibly sinister there. I mean, I apologize for even suggesting that anyone could cast aspersions on the morality of the entertainment industry or the fashion world. Anyway, Katie continues. We are speaking in late February. It is the first interview Page, 34, has given since disclosing in December that he is transgender in a heartfelt letter posted to Instagram, and he is crying before I have even uttered a question. I don't know. Female habits are hard to break. Sorry, I'm going to be emotional, but that's cool, right? He says, smiling through his tears. It's hard for him to talk about the days that led up to this disclosure. I don't believe that for a second. When I asked how he was feeling, he looks away, his neck exposed by a new short haircut. After a pause, he presses his hand to his heart and closes his eyes. This feeling of true excitement and deep gratitude to have made it to this point in my life, mixed with a lot of fear and anxiety. This is clearly the greatest role that Elliot, formerly Ellen Page, has ever played. It's not hard to understand why a trans person would be dealing with conflicting feelings in this moment, or any other moment for that matter. Increased social acceptance has led to more young people describing themselves as trans. 1.8% of Gen Z, compared with 0.2% of boomers, according to a recent Gallup poll. Yet this has fueled conservatives who are stoking fears about a transgender craze. President Joe Biden has restored the right of transgender military members to serve openly, and in Hollywood, trans people have never had more meaningful time on screen. When was the time when they actually had meaningful time on screen? Is all of Hollywood history going to be retconned, as they say, so that, oh yes, famous transgender people have always been, yeah, of course. Meanwhile, J.K. Rowling is leveraging her cultural capital to oppose transgender equality in the name of feminism. Boo! Feminism! And lawmakers are arguing in the halls of Congress over the validity of gender identities. Sex has become a political football in the culture wars, says Paisley Currah. Paisley, eh? Curious name, wouldn't you say? A professor of political science at Brooklyn College. Sex has become a political football in the culture wars. Yes, I guess this person didn't score very high in English at university. And so Page, who has charmed America as a precocious pregnant teenager in Juno. How do men get to be pregnant? I'm sure that will be explained to me. Constructed dreamscapes in Inception, and now stars in Netflix hit superhero show The Umbrella Academy. More on that later. Juno is one of the most obnoxious movies I have ever seen, and Inception is one of the most incomprehensible and boring movies I have ever seen. But never mind. What I was anticipating was a lot of support and love and a massive amount of hatred and transphobia, says Page. That's essentially what happened. What he did not anticipate was just how big this story would be. No? Really? He gained more than 400,000 new followers on Instagram on that day alone. Thousands of articles were published. Likes and shares reached the millions. Right-wing podcasters readied their rhetoric about women in men's locker rooms. Casting directors reached out to Page's manager, saying it would be an honor to cast Page in their next big movie. Is that how they characterized it in actual language, as an honor? So it was a lot. Over the course of 2 conversations, Page will say that understanding himself and all the specifics remains a work in progress. Fathoming one's gender and identity, innate and performed, personal and social, fixed and evolving, is complicated enough without being under a spotlight that never seems to turn off. Who turned on the spotlight? Okay, so one's gender, which apparently needs to be fathomed, is both innate and performed, fixed and evolving. Wait a minute, I thought that this was a man who was misgendered at birth and was treated as a woman. Well, not actually a woman. Oh, no. See, it's far more complicated than that. You see, you have genders, of which there are, I don't know, 80 or so, plus gender expressions, which are practically infinite. Never mind that. Having arrived at a critical juncture, Page feels a deep sense of responsibility to share his truth. Extremely influential people are spreading these myths and damaging rhetoric. Every day you're seeing our existence debated. Transgender people are so very real. But wait a minute, if they are, if these identities are both innate and performed and fixed and evolving, doesn't this cast the realness of it into question? That role in Pit Pony led to other productions, and eventually, when Page was 16, to a film called Mouth to Mouth. Playing a young anarchist, Page had a chance to cut his hair again, because that never happens in movies or TV productions, that women with long hair, say, are asked to cut their hair or to wear short wigs. That has never happened before Ellen Page. She is such a groundbreaker. This time, he shaved it off completely. The kids at his high school teased him, but in photos he has posted from that time on social media, he looks at these. I remember this movie called Minority Report. You may recall it. Samantha Morton, a beautiful woman, she actually shaved her head for that movie, but I'm sure that never happened, because it would seem that Elliot Page was the first person to ever shave head for a movie. Actually, Brad Pitt shaved his head for a movie called Fight Club. You might remember that one as well. Anyway, for the 2005 thriller Hard Candy, Page was asked to audition again in a wig. Soon, the hair was back. And again, with these gender stereotypes. Oh, so Juno brings Page an Oscar, BAFTA, and Golden Globe nomination and sudden mega fame. And it was too painful. I just never recognized myself, Page says. For a long time, I could not even look at a photo of myself. Okay, sure, I'm sure that happened. Page loved making movies, but also felt alienated by Hollywood and its standards. Alia Shawkat, a close friend and co-star in 2009's Whip It, describes all the attention from Juno as scarring. He had a really hard time with the press and expectations, Shawkat says. Put this on and look this way, and this is sexy. And of course, being in the movies or in television productions never involves being ordered where to look or how to look. Again, this is new. Page brought us all this. By the time he appeared in blockbusters like X-Men, The Last Stand, and Inception, Page was suffering from depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. He didn't know, he says, how to explain to people that even though I was an actor, just putting on a t-shirt cut for women would make me so unwell. I'm going to have to refrain from grinding my teeth here, because this is such an outrageously bogus statement. But I'm going to press on. In 2004, Page came out as gay, despite feeling for years that being out was impossible, given his career Gender identity and sexual orientation are, of course, distinct, but one queer identity can coexist with another. Ooh, we're just wading in this murk here. And I have to say this. I've said it before, but I've got to say it again. We've been informed for decades now that sexual identity, gender, is not a choice. It is immutable. It comes with birth. So Ellen Page, as Elliot then was, came out as a lesbian, and this was immutable, not a choice. But it turns out that Elliot Page was never a lesbian at all. Oh, ever get the feeling you've been cheated? In an emotional speech at a human rights campaign conference, Page talked about being part of an industry that places crushing standards on actors and viewers alike. You know, this person could have always just walked away, but then you wouldn't get the money and the fame and the attention. There are pervasive stereotypes about masculinity and femininity that define how we're all supposed to act, dress, and speak, and they serve no one. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. It was the isolation forced by the pandemic that brought to a head Page's wrestling with gender. Page had married a lesbian called Emma Portner in 2018, but they separated last summer and the two divorced in early 2021. We've remained close friends, Page says. That's what everybody in Hollywood says. I had a lot of time on my own to really focus on things that I think in so many ways unconsciously I was avoiding, he says. He was inspired by trailblazing trans icons no less, than Janet Mock and Laverne Cox, who found success in Hollywood while living authentically. Trans writers helped him understand his feelings. Page saw himself reflected in P. Carl's memoir, Becoming a Man. Eventually, shame and discomfort gave way to revelation. I was finally able to embrace being transgender and letting myself fully become who I am. This led to a series of decisions. One was asking the world to call him by a different name, Elliot, which he says he's always liked. Page has a tattoo, more on those later, that says EP Phone Home, a reference to a movie about a young boy with that name. I loved E.T. when I was a kid and always wanted to look like the boys in the movies, right? He says the other decision was to use different pronouns. For the record, both he, him, and they, them are fine. When I ask if he has a preference on pronouns for the purposes of this story, Page says he, him is great. A day before we speak, Page will speak to his mom about this interview, and she will tell him, I'm just so proud of my son. He grows emotional relating this and tries to explain that his mom, the daughter of a minister who was born in the 1950s, was always trying to do what she thought was best for her girl. Okay, another decision was to get top surgery. That is a euphemism for double radical mastectomy of undiseased tissue. Okay, top surgery. But wait a minute here. Wait a minute. Apparently, Page has a beef with Hollywood because it places crushing standards. There are pervasive stereotypes about masculinity and femininity that define how we're all supposed to act, dress, and speak. Oh, why couldn't Elliot Page, have been a man with breasts? There are men with breasts out there, aren't there? This is what I'm told. We also have, the female penis. So it would appear that she has given in to these pervasive stereotypes. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Page volunteers this information early in our conversation. At the time he posted his disclosure on Instagram, he was recovering in Toronto. Like many trans people, Page emphasizes being trans isn't all about surgery. For some people, it's unnecessary. For others, it's unaffordable. For the wider world, the media's focus on it has sensationalized transgender bodies. Yes, it's not as if these people can't stop talking about it. inviting invasive and inappropriate questions. This whole interview is devoted to that subject. But Page describes surgery as something that for him has made it possible to finally recognize himself when he looks in the mirror, providing catharsis he's been waiting for since the total hell of puberty. It has completely transformed my life, he says. So much of his energy was spent on being uncomfortable in his body. He says now he has that energy back. St. Thomas à Kempis, in his famous book, The Imitation of Christ, said, and I'm going to paraphrase this in its modern form, wherever you find yourself, that is where you are. In other words, changes of this sort, it cannot efface one's personality, cannot efface one's history. But a great many people today are persuaded that this is not so. Page says coming out as trans was selfish on one level. It's for me. I want to live and be who I am. But he also felt a moral imperative to do so. That's what Hollywood is all about. Moral imperatives. Given the times, human identity is complicated and mysterious, but politics insists on fitting everything into boxes. Oh, yes. Again, this is a woman who had 2 healthy breasts removed because she doesn't want to fit into any boxes. I don't know whether I want to read any more of this. I just have to suffer through these pictures of Elliot Page looking, for want of a better word, tormented. And there's a whole bunch of quotations here from people, well, female to male transsexuals who have a completely disinterested view of the whole issue. And we also get many pictures of Elliot Page's rat-like canine. Oh, so Elliot Page was attracted to the role of Vanya in the Umbrella Academy. To my amusement, I see that Wikipedia defines Vanya as both a male and female name. No, it is a male name. It is a diminutive or nickname for the Russian name Ivan. Vanya is crushed by self-loathing, believing herself to be the only ordinary sibling in an extraordinary family. Well, misery loves company, as they say. The character can barely summon the courage to move through the world. I related to how much Vanya was closed off, Page says. Yeah, there's some difficulty there because Vanya. So how is it that that Elliot Page gets to play this role as a man? It's all up for grabs now. All up for grabs. The debate over whether cisgender people who have repeatedly collected awards for playing trans characters should continue to do so has largely been settled. However, trans actors have rarely been considered for cisgender parts. Oh, okay. So men are no longer allowed to play women, or women are no longer allowed to play men, but Elliot Page can do whatever. Let's get back to the hair. Again, women and their hair. It seems very stereotypical. This includes having short hair again. During our interview, Page keeps rearranging strands on his forehead. It took him a long time to return to the barber's chair and ask to cut it short, but he got there. And how did that haircut feel? Page tears up again, then smiles. I could just not have enjoyed it more, he says. Yeah, okay. Let's have a look at the chat. Okay, hello to Palpicasso88 and to Dan. Oh, Palpicasso88 says Ottawa moving into red zone again. It's infuriating. Well, apparently the third wave has hit Ontario, part of an infinite number of waves. Chad Chadson, hello to you. Thank you, our moderator, for your valiant service. Says sharp suit, Kevin. Well, it's just a suit jacket. I'm not wearing suit pants. I'm wearing a pair of, what would you call them? Slacks, I suppose. Okay, fighting the patriarchy, yo mama. Is Elliot Page fighting the patriarchy, now identifying as a male? Perhaps subverting it from the inside. GC Style says, hello, KMG in chat. Hope all is well. Vienna Chronist says, Guten Abend, Leute. Random number generator says, good afternoon. Yes, okay. A girl pretending to be a boy, pretending to be a girl. It's certainly zany. This is from Steve. One of the first posts I read on KMG's old blog was a review of Juno. Yes, I joked after seeing that movie that I wanted to make the possession of acoustic guitars a crime and seriously considered converting to Islam. Just a joke, Claire Kaw. Just a joke. Okay. Let's see. Who else do we have here? I noticed that just the type is too small for me in the live chat, so I have to lean in. Halper says, suggestion, Honky Tonk Tuesday, says KMG have a bolo tie. I used to. Years ago. I used to. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe for April 1st, something from the Doug Stanhope collection should be worn. I used to see Doug Stanhope on Charlie Brooker's Media Roundup, and I thought, is this the smuggest comedian in the world? Yep, I'm American. Here I am sitting in a lawn chair, drinking beer, and I got something to say. For you Brits there, Americans are idiots. They're jerks. Yep, I'm pretty funny, aren't I? I'm Doug Stanhope. Thank you. Okay. And Run Kevin has a slightly quirky take on who is and isn't beautiful at times. I think Samantha Morton is a beautiful woman. No question. No question about it. G.I. Jane had a shaved head, says Rustin Shackelford. Thank you. Thank you for that. Many such examples. Chokokin666 says, imagine being wealthy and famous and so depressed. Well, the question with Elliot Page is, did the depression come with the entertainment industry, or was it before or after? Before or after? Popcasso88 says, Alia Shawkat's grandfather was Paul Burke, who was in Valley of the Dolls, which I'm going to talk about on Thursday. Paul Burke, there was a big effort to make him a star in the 1960s. He was in Naked City and other things, and I'll say more about this on Thursday, but he was a bit of a dud, actually. Chokokin666, body modification as sexual politics, phlegmaticus. He could have been a hero to the long marginalized gynomacastia community. Cecil Henry says, pervasive stereotypes equals unwanted facts from reality. Random number generator says, it's all about humiliation at this stage, 100%. Who is being humiliated? It seems as if we are all being humiliated. Debrea says, LOL, Columbia University to hold 6 additional graduations for different groups and genders. Really? Really? Lamprey Melt, hello. I like your outfit today. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to go back to this here. Now, this is an article also from Time magazine from 2015 by Daniel Daddario. And there's a picture of the then Ellen Page. It still says that. Look, I can say it because I'm at their website, and it says Ellen Page attends the X-Men Days of Future Past world premiere. Okay. Let's see. Ellen Page appears to have hit the wall, as they say, at what, the age of 26, 27? Ellen Page is on a new mission. Just don't call her brave. How many missions does Ellen Page have? How many bows in her quiver? Okay, so yes, she yells at Ted Cruz. Not very many people have ever done that. Page spoke to Time about the film, why she came out, and what she learned at a Buddhist high school in Halifax. Yep, Mom always wanted the best for her progeny, and so she was sent to a Buddhist high school. Yeah, so blah, 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 alphabet people not being represented, and, she is fighting that battle. Yeah, okay, but again, the morality. I remember watching the Pussy Riot documentary and thinking, oh my God, the courage of these people. It's just like, dude, come out. Just say you're gay. You're privileged. You have a family. You have no excuse. It kind of got to the point of, I felt guilty, to be honest with you, and I believe I absolutely should have. It's become kind of a moral imperative. There's that phrase again, to speak up. I know there's been so much progress, but there's still so much suffering in America, in Canada, and all over the world. Well, it's like that old joke. What is it, from National Lampoon? I've suffered. Now it's your turn. Okay, so yeah, let's go back to this Buddhist high school. And what do we learn about this? Yeah, my final year of high school was in a Buddhist high school, and everyone was somewhat queer. The joke was that it was where all the kids in Halifax go to come out. A kind of grooming parlor, one might say. The Bible gets brought up. And Page says there's lots of religious people who have evolved and changed. When you read the Bible, there's Old and New Testament verses. The stuff that's said about slavery is crazy. And of course, that was used to justify something that was beyond comprehension. No, you moron. Slavery is the default of human history. It is a commonplace amongst all societies, all tribes, all races. And it exists today. Hey, in Libya, remember how, Hillary Clinton decided to sort that place out? Yeah, they have open slave markets in Libya now, which is pretty much broke down into, 3 or more different countries. And let's talk a little bit about Ellen's tattoos. She has this is from bodyartguru.com. Number 1, turtle tattoo. The inner side of her right forearm, just below her elbow, contains the word turtle. Ellen got this tattoo as she just loves turtles. Wig tattoo. Ellen's left bicep contains the name Wig, spelled W-I-I-G, tattooed on it. Ellen revealed this tattoo on Conan O'Brien's show whilst talking about tattoos. She got it to show her love for her friend, Kristen Wiig. Name and word tattoos. The outer side of her upper right arm contains the name C. Keynes tattooed on it. Is that a name? Below the name are the words EP phone home. Yes, you see a trend here. Apparently, my personality is not enough. My words are not enough. I need to put inspirational messages on my body so that people will always know what I think or feel. The EP in EP Phone Home stands for Ellen's wife, Emma Portner, who is a Canadian professional dancer. That's not what she told Time magazine. Okay. The Umbrella Academy. I had heard of this show, but I really had no idea of how stupid it was until today. This comes from a comic book from Dark Horse Comics that is written by Gerald Way and illustrated by Gabriel Ba. Gerald Way is the gender-conflicted leader and vocalist of the band My Chemical Romance. The titular team of the Umbrella Academy, I'm reading from Wikipedia, is described as a dysfunctional family of superheroes. You see, dysfunction is a kind of superheroism. Did you know that? Well, we know with Greta Thunberg that her various ailments are superpowers. Her various mental ailments, they're superpowers. In the mid-20th century, at the instant of the finishing blow in a cosmic wrestling match, what? 43 superpowered infants are inexplicably born to random unconnected women who showed no signs of pregnancy at the start of the day. Sounds painful. It is hinted by a character implied to be God that they are collectively a modern-day incarnation of the Messiah. Sir Reginald Hargreaves, aka the Monocle, are you kidding me? An extraterrestrial disguised as a famous entrepreneur adopts 7 of the children and prepares them to save the world from an unspecified threat as the Umbrella Academy. In Apocalypse Suite, the team disbands and falls out of contact until they meet on the news of Hargreaves' death and subsequently reunite when one of their own numbers becomes a super villain. Sounds very adult. Very adult. In more trans news, this is from the Daily Mail, Sports Illustrated has revealed the first ever Black and Asian transgender model to grace the pages of its annual swimsuit issue. Though the iconic magazine doesn't launch until July, the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue Instagram account has been unveiling one model a day throughout the month of March, and this morning they made waves with the announcement that Chicago-born model, dancer, actor, and activist, of course an activist, Lena Bloom, 27, is joining the likes of Lice Ribeiro and Josephine Scriver in the 2020 edition. Lena, who is the second trans model to pose for EI Swim. This looks like a Black woman to me, but there always has to be a first. Always has to be a first. Opened up to Good Morning America about her boundary breaking, accomplishment gushing. I never imagined that I would be born in a time when something like this would happen for someone with my skin tone and for someone with my background. Yes, Black and Asian. That combo has never been popular except for, Tiger Woods. This is a grievous error by Sports Illustrated. Playboy magazine did the same thing a year or two ago. Playboy magazine, okay, they weren't going to have nudes in it anymore. So what's the point of the magazine? I mean, is it going to be like Maxim? That magazine doesn't exist anymore, does it? So then they went back to nudes, and then they had a trans person as a Playmate of the Month. And, okay, both Playboy magazine and the latest, most recent iterations of the swimsuit issues have been softcore pornography. There's no other way they can be described. When the swimsuit issue began, it was, pinups. At the point where they were painting a woman, putting body paint on a woman in lieu of a swimsuit, and this counts. No, it was softcore pornography. These magazines are bought by men. And now men have this nagging feeling in the back of their head. Oh, yes, look at that woman. Wait, was this born a woman? I don't think I want to buy this anymore. But I'm sure they're clever people there. I'm sure they've addressed this problem. No, I don't think they've addressed this problem. Cara Delevingne, who inexplicably is one of the top models in the world. She looks like a 15-year-old mentally retarded and anorexic coat rack with AIDS, says to the Daily Mail, I was disgusted by the idea of same sex. She admits she became suicidal while struggling with her sexuality after being quite homophobic in her youth. The model 28, who identifies as pansexual, what does that mean? She's up for threesomes. So she grew up feeling disgusted by the idea of having a same-sex partner. Well, she got over it soon enough. In the past, Cara has dated stars, including singer St. Vincent and actress Ashley Benson. Dating, is that what they're calling it now? You see, this is the argument that we hear from those who demand acceptance of gender diversity. And Abigail Schreier describes in her book, Irreversible Damage. The old saw was that children would say, give me what I want or I'll hold my breath until I turn blue. And now they say, with regard to gender diversity, give me what I want. That is to say, puberty blockers and possibly top surgery, or I will kill myself. Yes, this kind of despicable blackmail is considered to be perfectly acceptable now. Funny thing, though, in the Time magazine story, they mentioned this, I think, pretty much discredited figure of 41% of trans people and their suicide attempts. Once again, it seems only cis male people actually go through with it very often. Cis women, they threaten it. They threaten it a lot more than men. But when it comes down to it, they just can't. They just can't. I'm going to switch topics here. I mentioned this yesterday. I don't want to hear anyone from the British Conservative Party or any of the other parties there talk about their commitment to Britain's long tradition of, liberty going back to Magna Carta or the so-called Glorious Revolution in 1688. Again from the Mail, MPs vote in favor of new law cracking down on annoying protests despite claims the curbs would make a dictator blush. MPs voted 359 to 263 to progress it through a second reading in the House of Commons tonight. It means the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill has passed its first main test despite some Tory unease. Labour voted against the bill, which includes the offence of intentionally or recklessly causing public nuisance. Oh, so it's Labour that is taking a stand against this and not the Conservative Party. The policing bill was part of the Conservative 2019 manifesto, but the elements raised eyebrows from MPs on the party's libertarian wing. Libertarian wing. Prior restraint. Apparently to oppose prior restraint and to the government to pretty much eliminate the right to protest if a police officer thinks that that's too much. Yes, that puts you out into the fever swamps of libertarianism. Such is the degradation of modern England. Anarcho-tyranny. Yes. Again from the Mail. Moment girl, 2 years old, sobs and begs to use the toilet after 5 shops and cafes refuse to let her use their bathrooms because of COVID. This is the upsetting moment. A 2-year-old girl begs to use the toilet after 5 shops and cafes allegedly refused to let her use the bathrooms due to coronavirus. Furious mother, Lucinda Taylor Milne, 33, was traveling through Sheffield city centre last Tuesday when her daughter Lola needed to use the bathroom. She claimed staff at Starbucks, Cafe Nero, Boots, and Marks and Spencer outlets told her their toilets were closed and could not be opened. They allegedly watched sobbing Lola beg, "Please, I need a wee-wee," but still would not help her. Eventually, the mother and daughter used a bathroom at a McDonald's where they had earlier been rejected by staff. Yes, it's commonplace for so many of these places now to have closed their bathrooms. And commonplace now, hotels used to have a computer in the lobby, which you could use to go on the internet and other things. And this has been shut down for a year now based on what Kingsley Amis called the easier for them principle. And we're going to move on to lockdown skeptics here. Italy and France quickly resume AstraZeneca rollout when EU Medicines Agency gives green light. The experts have spoken. 40% of theater and arts workers have lost job in past 12 months. Well, we don't need culture anymore, not on the stage. We don't need live music or live theater or any of that stuff now because we have computer screens and smartphones. Lockdown enthusiasts belatedly recognize limitations of precautionary principle. The EU and offer its member states doggedly follows the precautionary principle, writes Matthew Lesh in CapX, blaming this principle for the suspension of the rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine in various EU countries. But hang on a minute. Is this the same Matthew Lesh who has been an enthusiastic cheerleader for the British lockdowns? He goes on to say about this rationale for erring on the side of caution, quote, "To pass the precautionary principle challenge requires doing the impossible, proving something is completely safe. Based on this logic, if stairs or pools were invented today, they would be forbidden because of the risk of falling and drowning," unquote. Well, quite. In case it's escaped your attention, Matthew, this is precisely the argument that lockdown skeptics have been making for the past year. It was a rigid application of the precautionary principle that led governments across the world to lock their citizens in their homes last year because of the dangers posed by SARS-CoV-2 were still largely unknown. It is the precautionary principle that is also responsible for the climate extinction panic. Something mildly unpleasant might happen decades from now, so the economies of the world have to be smashed. Yeah, if we were really to take the precautionary principle seriously, maybe we would ban cars, or maybe we would restrict them to a top speed of 30 miles an hour. Maybe we would require car drivers and other passengers to wear helmets as race car drivers and motorcyclists do. Maybe we would forbid people from leaving their homes because leaving one's home can be very dangerous. Apart from the risk of murder, robbery, assault, there's always the possibility that one could fall down stairs or slip on leaves or snow or ice or all manner of things. But wait, aren't we told that home is the most dangerous place for women because it is their partners or husbands who are most likely to assault and murder them? Yes, that is absolutely true. And there's a reason for that. Is because when you know someone, you have reasons to dislike or hate them. People are afraid of random violence for strangers because these people have no reason to dislike you. This is something that feminists have never understood. So perhaps everyone should be forced to live alone and also wear helmets at all times indoors, because there's all sorts of things to slip on and trip on inside the house. You see where the precautionary principle leads? And cancer deaths likely to rise for first time in decades due to COVID backlog, charities warn. But as we know, cancer is not really a serious disease, not like COVID. No, that's like yesterday's news. This was mentioned earlier. Ontario now in third wave of COVID-19. Provinces Hospital Association says. This is from Sean Davidson at CTV News. We're now in wave 3, the OHA said, adding that a strong adherence to public health measures is urgently needed to prevent overwhelming hospitals. The hospitals are always going to be overwhelmed, but they never are. And ICU wards are designed to be close to capacity. And the reason for that is otherwise you'd have a bunch of doctors and nurses standing around doing nothing but drawing pay. I don't know, all of these stories written about hospitals being overwhelmed, IC units being overwhelmed, they never seem to mention this, and I'm beginning to think that this omission is deliberate. And I'm going to go on to Alex Berenson now. I wonder what it's like being one of the most hated men in America. I wonder if he's got death threats. I actually think that he has. Actually, I don't see him whining about it. U.S. FDA felt extreme pressure to allow the fast sale of Pfizer's mRNA COVID vaccine. Emails from the, wait for it, European Medicines Agency show. Just days after Pfizer posted its first big clinical trial results, a top EMA official warned FDA was being pushed hard by AZAR and the U.S. government. Excellent thread here from a New York Magazine writer, no less, about how the elite media has insisted on pretending the U.S. experience with the Roe was uniquely bad, when in reality it was little different than Europe's. They still have this curfew in Paris, do they? 12-hour curfew? And I thought they were just so much cleverer there that, oh, yes, the lockdowns were going to stamp this out, zero COVID. Well, it didn't happen, did it? Nothing close to that happened. And that's enough COVID for today. Let's go to the chat. Chogokin666 says, erring on the side of logic is not getting any of them with the minimal danger of contacting this voodoo. Hikma Warrior says, I'm using the Benedictine option to get through this. Good time for introspection, meditation, and fixing the plumbing. That would be a reference to Rod Dreyer's book. Jaakko Raipala, our Finnish friend, says the Finnish government actually told us that it's a good thing that Germany and Sweden are canceling their vaccination program due to side effects because it means Finland can buy their vaccines. Berea says, I can't wait for wave 69, again from Jaakko Raipala. And they're also panicked and angry that trust in government and scientists is collapsing. Popcasso 88 says, third wave equals more fab dance routines from exhausted nurses. Anrun says, Berenson's Twitter really is must reading. Yes, it is. Again, amazing that he hasn't been kicked off. It is kind of amazing. And he shames the media. If I want to find out, what the facts are or the reported facts are about the safety and efficacy of these viruses, I go to Berenson's Twitter feed because this information is not being compiled anywhere else. What does that tell you about the media? It looks like another wasted year, 2021. I don't know. The people I see on the streets are already crazy enough. What's it going to be like if this goes on for another year? Is it going to be like 28 days later? Is that what's going to happen? Cheryl Teagues, hot, says Pelpcasso 88. Yes, no question about it, but that was decades ago. Okay, Sports Illustrated putting fatties on the cover. It became Whale Watchers Monthly plus size model. They're in the business of selling magazines, not selling an agenda, but they don't seem to understand that. I heard Greta had been corresponding with Ted Kaczynski. I've seen that reported. I don't know whether it's true or not. Hikma Warrior says Libya was known as Tripolitania in Roman times. Yes, Libya is an artificial country that didn't exist until what? 1946? Oh, I like this. G's Heastel says Page should go the extra mile with the love of turtles and get a Mitch McConnell tattoo. That's good. Let's talk about these. I talked about the smoldering wreck of feminism. Let's talk about the smoldering wreck of what is known as conservatism. And let's start with, are we going to start with Doubt That? No, we'll go to Doubt That second. Let's go to Brett Stevens of the New York Times, who is officially certified a conservative. He's a true conservative, a never Trumper. He writes, yesterday, America could use a liberal party. The new division in politics isn't between liberals and conservatives, it's between liberals and illiberals. Stevens hasn't been paying attention. Liberalism led us to our present malaise, and having served its purpose, it has almost vanished. He begins last month. Gallup released the results of surveys showing that public support for a third party was at an all-time high, 62% up from 40% when Gallup first started polling the issue in 2003. Only 33% of Americans feel the current parties do an adequate job of representing the American people. To the extent that the results attracted any notice, it was mainly in the form of a knowing yawn. The reasons a third party probably can't win an election in the U.S. are well known. The Republican and Democratic brands are weak. Party decline is an old story. But in 2016, the Republican Party collapsed in the face of what amounted to a hostile takeover. The Republicans did so very bad in 2016. Did they? Democrats are at less risk, helped by Joe Biden's politically astute combination of leftist policies and a centrist tone. Politically astute. That's a good one. That's a good one. Second, the people who now seem most eager for a third party at the political extreme. Yes, that means if you're a supporter of Donald Trump, you are at the political extreme. Third, the neglected territory of American politics is no longer at the illiberal fringes. It's at the liberal center. It's the place most Americans still are temperamentally and morally, and might yet return to if given the choice. But I thought Bret Stephens was supposed to be a conservative. I suppose he's like David A. French and the rest of them. Well, no, I called myself a conservative for my whole life. I'm actually a classical liberal. Oh, get this. By liberal, I don't mean big state welfarism. That's what America has, big state welfarism. America changed when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected in 1932. A rugged individualism got a bullet in its head at that time. I mean the tenets and spirit of liberal democracy, respect for the outcome of elections. Yes, except when Stacey Abrams does it. The rule of law, except when the Supreme Court simply makes up the law, as it's been doing since at least the Earl Warren Court. Freedom of speech and the principle in courts and law and opinion alike of innocent until proven guilty. Hey, you remember Joe Biden, how centrist and astute he was? Last year, Joe Biden said, in response to this panic, this bogus panic about campus rape, or what, 25%, 50% of all women have been raped, he said that the presumption of innocence for men accused of rape would be dropped if he became president. This is the centrist and politically astute Joe Biden. Deference to political autonomy, but skepticism of identity politics. Respect for the free market, bracketed by sensible regulation and cushioned by social support. Oh, does that include Silicon Valley? I don't think that Stephens agrees with that. A commitment to equality of opportunity, not equity in outcomes. He doesn't say equality in outcomes, he says equity. A commitment to equality of opportunity, as I've mentioned before, and Russell Kirk, I learned this from Russell Kirk. It's an evil notion. Equality of opportunity cannot be obtained. It is a totalitarian project because some people are born with certain advantages over others. I don't mean just genetic advantages. I mean advantages of family. So what are you going to do? Take these children from their families? Or as I've joked before, the high IQ ones, maybe bash them over the head with a brick a few times to bring their IQ down 30 or 40 points? They could try that. Anyone who talks about equality of opportunity cannot be considered a conservative. But he continues, a well-grounded faith in the benefits of immigration. Oh, and what are the benefits? Americans being made strangers in their own country, the collapse of community, the rise of race hatred. Those benefits? An enormous transfer of wealth from the middle class to the upper class to the 1%. In fact, free trade. Yes, the benefits of free trade, where the rich get richer and the poor get immiserated. The middle class gets immiserated as well. See, the conservatism of Bret Stephens. A well-grounded, yes, a new technology, new ideas. Oh, yes, conservatives are all about new ideas, and wait for it, experiments in living. Fidelity to the ideals and shared interests of the free world in the face of dictators and demagogues. In other words, if you do things differently than us, we will bomb you, and we bomb you because we love you. Let's go on to Ross Douthat. This is a piece from today. Can anything end the voting wars? As battle over voting rules burn hotter, the stakes are still lower than both sides seem to think. You see, this is the conservative dodge. It doesn't really matter. Abortion doesn't really matter. Divorce doesn't really matter. Trans doesn't matter. Gay marriage doesn't matter. Let's talk about the things that really matter. Money and Israel. Those are the things that matter. No, no, no. And so he writes, Republicans have long championed voter ID laws as a bulwark against alleged voting fraud, while Democrats have countered that such restrictions unfairly burden many Americans, racial minorities, especially in the exercise of their hard-won right to vote. The good news, I said back then, was that lots of studies suggest that voter ID laws don't do either thing. They don't prevent much or any fraud, but they also don't have much, if any, effect on turnout for minorities or any other group. So conservatives could stop pushing them, liberals could stop freaking out about them, and without either side losing anything substantial, compromise and conciliation could rule the day. Naturally, since then, the voting wars have only burned hotter. Oh, so this is the new line. There's no such thing as voting fraud in America. There never has been voting fraud in America. Has Ross Douthat heard of the 1960 presidential election? Has he heard about landslide Lyndon Johnson in his 1948 election, which was extensively chronicled by Robert Caro? Does he know about these things? Has he ever heard of the phrase vote early and vote often? Was that just pulled out of thin air, that one? Because voting fraud doesn't have a long storied history in America? No, it's only that bad man Trump who made a fuss about it. No, wait a minute. The Democrats and the media said that Trump stole the 2016 election. It was Russian bots what done it, and that Trump was merely a puppet of Vladimir Putin. Oh, yes. Each side is talking about this as an existential fight, with the very concept of a fair democratic election hanging in the balance, an existential fight. You see, this is the difference between the left and the right, or the sham right, like Ross Douthat. The left understands what an existential fight is, and the right, or the sham right, oh no, this isn't the hill we're going to die on. What is the hill that they're going to die on? When they start getting herded into concentration camps? When they're forbidden to hold jobs? When their telephone service is taken away? When their light and heat is taken away for their bad opinions? Again, don't call yourself a conservative, kiddies. Never do that. It's a label for losers. It's a busted brand. It is a means by which the people who hate your guts seek control over you. They also want, your money as well. Speaking of politics and the truth, I'm going to read some more from James Burnham's The Machiavellians, Defenders of Liberty, specifically Vilfredo Pareto and the circulation of elites. An enormous difference to the society and its development will result from the extent to which clever individuals are concentrated in its elite or spread evenly throughout the entire population, or even concentrated in the non-elite. The residues, which in their circulation are of chief influence on the social equilibrium, are those belonging to Class 1 and Class 2. Indeed, in discussing the circulation of the elites, Pareto expands his definition of these two classes so that the whole problem can be summed up roughly in terms of them. Individuals marked primarily by Class 1 combinations residues are the foxes of Machiavelli. They live by their wits. They put their reliance on fraud, deceit, and shrewdness. They do not have strong attachment to family, church, nation, and traditions, though they may exploit these attachments in others. They live in the present, taking little thought of the future, and are always ready for change, novelty, and adventure. In economic affairs, they incline toward speculation, promotion, innovation. They are not adept, as a rule, in the use of force. They are inventive and chance-taking. Yes, fraud, deceit, and shrewdness. This is our ruling class today. Individuals marked by Class 2 group persistences residues are Machiavelli's lions. They're able and ready to use force, relying on it rather than brains to solve their problems. They are conservative, patriotic, loyal to tradition, and solidly tied to supra-individual groups like family or church or nation. They are concerned for posterity and the future. In economic affairs, they are cautious, saving, and orthodox. They distrust the new, unlike noted conservative Bret Stephens, and praise character and duty rather than wits. Pareto cites ancient Athens as a typical example of a state with a heavy proportion of class 1 residues in its elite, and an unusually large proportion even in the non-elite, where class 2 residues almost always greatly predominate. From this distribution sprang many of the glories of Athens, as well as the extraordinarily rapid shifts in its fortunes. In every field, economic, political, and cultural, Athens welcomed the new and was ready for any adventure. After the defeat of Persia at Salamis, Athens could not return to the old ways. Taking immediate advantage of the fleet which had been built up for the war, she went on to establish her commercial empire in the eastern Mediterranean. When the tribute from the alliance was no longer needed for war, it was used to build the wonderful temples and statues. Philosophers and poets were honored for attacking the old traditional ways of life, but her glories were comparatively short-lived. She was always weakened from within by the numerous class 1 individuals who were constantly forming factions, plotting with internal or external enemies, and organizing rebellions. And Athens could not endure the long, drawn-out trials of the Peloponnesian Wars. On the one hand, the class 1 tendencies led her to attempt too much. She refused peace when it could have been made with honor and profit, like America or NATO with Russia, and launched the Sicilian expedition, which in its outcome proved her ruin. On the other, wit and shrewdness were not a firm enough foundation to sustain the shock of plague, death, siege, weariness, and defeat. Sparta, in extreme contrast, was a nation where class 2 residues were wholly predominant, both in the general population and in the elite. Innovation in Sparta was a crime. Everything was regulated by ancient custom and religion and time-sanctified tradition. The individual counted for nothing, the group for all. Adventure was always to be distrusted. From these roots, Sparta derived a tremendous power of endurance when faced with adversity. But she always stopped short of anything spectacular. She produced no philosophy, no liquid wealth, and little art. She never tried to establish a great empire. Her own armies went home after the Persians were defeated. In spite of defeats and crushing hardships, she finally conquered in the Peloponnesian Wars, but in the 4th century, when the conditions of life and warfare greatly changed, she too was lost. Because of her lack of class 1 residues, Sparta could not adapt herself to new ways, so, defending the old, she perished. The social combination that is strongest against external enemies, and at the same time able to bring about a fairly high internal level of culture and material prosperity, is that wherein, 1, class 2 residues are widespread and active among the masses, the non-elite. 2, the individuals with a high level of class 1 residues are concentrated in the elite. 3, a fair percentage of class 2 residues nevertheless still remains within the elite. And 4, the elite is comparatively open, so that at least a comparatively free circulation can take place. Well, let's look at the question of immigration in this regard. The elites have now taken the position, essentially, of open borders. Now, some libertarians, both in the United States and Canada, state this openly. Most of them wouldn't care to say it, but this is what they believe. If one's borders are not going to be defended from invaders, and that anyone who steps foot on a country's soil has the right to stay, because it would be cruel to send them back, this is essentially open borders. The elite now does not permit, especially in my country, any dissent from the view that infinite immigration and infinite diversity is anything less than a wonderful thing. Clearly, this is a disastrous position for the elite to have taken, because eventually it will get to the point where, in self-defense, the masses will have to revolt against the elite. And I won't speculate as to the nature of this revolt. The meaning of this optimism combination can be translated as follows into more usual terms. One, the masses have faith in an integrating myth or ideology, a strong sense of group solidarity, a willingness to endure physical hardship and sacrifice. Two, the best and most active brains of the community are concentrated in the elite and ready to take advantage of whatever opportunity the historical situation presents. Three, at the same time, the elite is not cynical and does not depend exclusively upon its wits, but is able to be firm, to use force if the internal or external condition calls for it. For the elite is prevented from gross degeneration through the ability of new elements to rise into its ranks. So let's look at this question of women in the military, which was a battle that, the right failed to fight, in the 1990s. Now it's pregnant women in the military and transgender people in the military. Again, this is an insane position for the elites to take, because eventually it will lead to crushing and humiliating military defeat. And the inability or the unwillingness or the total opposition of the elite to a circulation of the elite, whereby people who are not insane on the issues of immigration and gender, if you will, in the military, are allowed to be part of the elite. Again, this argues for revolution or collapse. Burnham continues, a combination of this sort does not, however, as a rule, last long. The typical, though not universal, pattern of development of organized societies goes along some such lines as these. The community, nation, becomes established and consolidated after a period of wars of conquest or of internal revolutions. At this point, the governing elite is strongly weighted with Class II residues. Revolutions and great wars put a premium on faith, powers of endurance, and force. After the consolidation, activities due to Class I residues increase in importance and are able to flourish. The relative percentage of Class I residues in the elite increases. The foxes replace the lions. The proportion of Class II residues remains high, as always, in the masses. A time of great material prosperity may follow under the impulse and manipulations of the Class I residues. But the elite has lost its faith, its self-identification with the group. It thinks all things can be solved by shrewdness, deceit, combinations. It is no longer willing and able to use force. It reaches a point where it cannot withstand the attack from an external enemy, stronger in Class II residues, or from within, when the masses, one way or another, get a leadership able to organize their potential strength. The combinationist elite is destroyed, very often carrying its whole society to ruin along with it. Let us put this process in the simplest possible terms by reducing it to the problem of force, noting that a willingness and ability to use force is primarily an expression of Class II residues. Pareto writes, to ask whether or not force ought to be used in a society, whether the use of force is or is not beneficial, is to ask a question that has no meaning. For force is used by those who wish to preserve certain uniformities, e.g. the existing class structure of society, the status quo, and by those who wish to overstep them. And the violence of the one stands in contrast and in conflict with the violence of the others. In truth, if a partisan of a governing class disavows the use of force, he means that he disavows the use of force by insurgents trying to escape from the norms of the given uniformity. On the other hand, if he says he approves of the use of force, what he really means is that he approves of the use of force by the public authority to constrain insurgents to conformity. Does this remind anyone of what's happened since January 6th of this year? Conversely, if a partisan of the subject class says he detests the use of force in society, what he really detests is the use of force by constituted authorities in forcing dissidents to conform. And if instead he lauds the use of force, he is thinking of the use of force by those who would break away from certain social uniformities. Let's consider the right a little longer. There's no question that people like Major Tom Nichols and Kevin Williamson detest the American people, the Class II people. They are the mud people, as the Z-Man says. It's horrible to contemplate. I mean, these people, they don't even watch HBO shows. And they hid this. They hid this for the longest time, but now they write paeans to their own brilliance. These hacks, these think tank seat fillers, believe that they are the creme de la creme. Too funny. I'll have more on the circulation of the elites tomorrow. But meanwhile, let's go back to the chat. HI Positive Transgender says Eustace Mullins was all over this. His book Murder by Injection is required reading. Sorry, wrong chat. Oh, okay. AlphaGo says women could be guardians as what Jonathan Bowden accepted, but not warriors, although there have been. But as a standing army, it's madness. Debrea says women are prone to fainting. Tom Anderson says the elites cannot have any single holdout of objectivity. And again, because from objectivity flows fascism, this is what the Institute for Social Research found. Yeah, okay. Okay, removal of reference points denies people the categories of the mind that they need to navigate the world. Keep in mind that, liberalism is pretty much dead now that we've returned to magical thinking. We've returned to the world of myths. What is Antifa but a myth? What is Black Lives Matter but a myth? There's nothing at all objective there. Okay. KMG, do you know anyone who got the jab? No, I don't, but I'm not a good person to ask about this, mainly because I don't really know all that many people in Victoria. Hikma Warrior says Nikolai Trubetskoy had a lot to say about a proper nationalism in addition to elucidating your Asianism. Oh, okay, I'm not going to repeat that comment. The Machiavellians, is that a book I don't know of, says AlphaGo? Well, as I've explained, when did I first read this book? Close to 20 years ago. And as they say, the scales fell from my eyes. And I felt like a fool because everything that I'd believed about politics and the nature of power and how things changed was wrong. It was quite obviously wrong. Starting with Dante, as Burnham does, Dante told a lot of comfortable lies about the world. And why? For his own benefit and that of his own the people allied to him politically. None of what he said made any sense, and Machiavelli has been painted as a great villain because Machiavelli dared to tell us the truth of how the world really works. Almost impossible to find a physical copy of the Machiavellians. Steve says Machiavellians is back in print. Check Amazon or any big bookseller. I got an EPUB version of it. Apparently it fell out of copyright. Okay, there's a tradition of straight talk in most Mediterranean countries, says Hikma Warrior. Greeks are ballistic. Today, Maria Bartiromo had a great 5 minutes on feminism and nonsense. LOL at a girl, says Debreas. I've always liked her, just like Joey Ramone did. He wrote a song about her. I suppose perhaps he'll be canceled for that retroactively. So what are we going to talk about now? Oh, yes, let's talk about the Washington Post, where democracy dies in damned lies. Karl Kraus famously said, "How is the world ruled and led to war? Diplomats lie to journalists and believe these lies when they see them in print." He wrote this, in the 1920s or 1930s, but it is just as true now as it was then. Karl Kraus was the famous Viennese satirist who is much understood because of a comment that he made. He had a journal, a one-man journal called Die Feckel, the Eagle, Falcon, I forget which. And he had been warning against Hitler for years. Krauss was a right-wing Jew. And as Hitler was coming to power, he said, I have nothing to say about the man. In other words, I've been warning you people for years, and you didn't listen. Statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States of America. The Washington Post just issued a correction as to the contents of the incorrectly reported phone call I had with respect to voter fraud in the great state of Georgia. Well, I appreciate the Washington Post correction, which immediately makes the Georgia witch hunt a non-story. The original story was a hoax right from the very beginning. I would further appreciate a strong investigation into Fulton County, Georgia, and the Stacey Abrams political machine, which I believe would totally change the course of the presidential election in Georgia. Fulton County has not been properly audited for vote or signature verification. They only looked at areas of the state where there would most likely be a few problems. The consent decree signed between Raffensperger and Stacey Abrams was not approved by the Georgia State Legislature and therefore should be deemed invalid. I'm not going to say anything more about Trump's claims about the election because I'm not allowed to. But the point is that the Washington Post ran an outrageously false story, which should be considered important, but it's not. Only people, like Breitbart and the Federalist and Gateway Pundit and the usual gang who are carrying on about this. This is the existential crisis which Ross Douthat does not believe exists. Here's John Nolte at the aforementioned Breitbart. On Monday, the far-left Washington Post admitted it spread the very worst kind of lies about former President Trump on January the 9th. Nevertheless, as of this writing, the fake news outlet is refusing to expose the source of those lies. This refusal is notable for several reasons. To begin with, one of the ways in which the media are supposed to ensure anonymous sources do not burn them, i.e. lie to them to further an agenda or their own personal interests, is with the threat of exposure. This makes perfect sense, no? Without the fear of exposure, what's to stop people from planting fake stories by posing as a high-level source or someone in the know? Without there being a consequence for lying, why not plant lies? Doesn't it make sense that a media outlet concerned with its own credibility would expose the source responsible for them publishing a lie? Before I get to why the disgraced Washington Post will not burn its source, it's important to lay out just how serious this fake news was. On January the 9th, the day before Georgia's U.S. Senate runoffs, the second most consequential election of the 2020 cycle, the election that decided who controlled the U.S. Senate and just how far his fraudulency, Joe Biden, could push this country left, the Post published a bombshell of lies undoubtedly timed to affect the outcome of that election in favor of the Democrat Party. The Post told the world there was a recording of then-President Trump talking with Francis Watson, the chief investigator of the Georgia Secretary of State's office, and leaning on him by telling him he would be a national hero if he found the fraud, national hero in quotes, found the fraud in quotes, to overturn Georgia's win for Biden. So the Post told the world that this was on tape, that there was a smoking gun of Trump basically bribing a Georgia state official. Well, there was one problem. It never happened. It was all a lie, and over the weekend, the disgraced Post was forced to issue what it obviously hoped would be a quiet correction of a story that should be retracted. Quote, correction, 2 months after publication of this story, the Georgia Secretary of State released an audio recording of President Donald Trump's December phone call with the state's top elections investigator. The recording revealed that the Post misquoted Trump's comments on the call based on information provided by a source. Trump did not tell the investigator to find the fraud or that she would be a national hero if she did so. Instead, Nolte's made a mistake, or the editor of Breitbart has made a mistake. It's Francis with an E, so it's obviously a woman's name. Instead, Trump urged the investigator to scrutinize ballots in Fulton County, Georgia, asserting she would find dishonesty there. He also told her that she had the most important job in the country right now. A story about the reporting can be found here. The headline and text of the story have been corrected to remove quotes misattributed to Trump, unquote. In other words, had the Wall Street Journal not obtained the recording of the call, we would never have known the Washington Post published a big fat lie to meddle in and rig the January 10th Georgia runoffs. This is a massive humiliation for the far-left outlet, and for CNN, which claimed that it had independently corroborated the Post story. How could CNN independently corroborate a story that was false? Oh, yeah, like weapons of mass destruction. At this point, in a sane world, you would think that a news outlet concerned with its credibility would gleefully expose the anonymous source responsible for spreading this bald-faced lie. But as of now, the Post and CNN are refusing. Unfortunately, this is nothing new. When you look back at the breathtaking amount of lies CNN and the Post have published over the past few years, not once will you find them exposing the source who supposedly lied to them. The question now is why? Why won't the Post begin the hard work of restoring its reputation and ensuring this will never happen again by making an example of the source? Here's some reasons. One, there is no source. The Post made it up. Sorry, but what I've seen from the Post over the past 5 years, one bald-faced lie after another about Russian collusion and all those race hoaxes, it makes perfect sense that a bunch of Washington Post editors sat around and made this up in the hopes of rigging the Georgia runoffs. 10 years ago, this never would have crossed my mind. Today, it sits at the top of my list. 2, media encourage sources to lie to them. As we saw throughout the Russian collusion hoax and all those race hoaxes, the media are happy to be lied to if the lie furthers the left-wing narrative and agenda. Lying sources also give the media cover to publish lies. Oops, this isn't our fault. We were just reporting what a high-placed source told us. Number 3, the source will burn them right back. If the Post burns its source, the person might turn right around and say, hey, they knew I was lying. I told them I was lying. Number 4, why bother when there are no repercussions for lying? Because the elite media have basically devolved into a bubbled cult, there are no longer any repercussions when you blow a major story or get publishing a bald-faced lie. Corporate media used to police itself. I mean, when Dan Rather published those fake documents about then-President George W. Bush in 2004, because the rest of the media cared about their own reputations, they raised hell about it. Those days are over. The only thing the media police anymore is ideological conformity within its own ranks. Things like this, things like lying about a presidential phone call just a few hours before a consequential election, are no longer frowned upon. In fact, there is no doubt in my mind that media cultists are all thrilled the Post published this lie and are right now congratulating the Post for lying to further the cause. No, I don't have any doubt about that either, actually. Going back to the weapons of mass destruction scam, Judith Miller of the New York Times was made a scapegoat for this, but how many of the others that had colluded in these lies were punished? Why weren't whole news sections, editorial sections sacked because of this? It's one thing to publish a false story. It's quite another thing to publish a false story which results in the death of thousands of American soldiers, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, and the waste of trillions of dollars of American taxpayer money. Mark Hemingway writes, this kind of mistake is beyond serious. There's zero accountability in major corporate media anymore, yet they continually insist they're the ones holding the line on the truth. And always remember, what should scare you about the media is what doesn't get exposed. Also note, headline on the Post follow-up story is a sort of maliciously anodyne recording reveals details of Trump call to Georgia's chief elections investigator. It's not. Trump's remarks grossly misrepresented across media because we credulously fall for political ops. Anyway, it's also worth pondering, when was the last time you saw correction of this gravity that was anywhere near this damaging to a Democratic politician? I'm guessing you have to dig pretty far back. And, yes, this is from UNS, Steve Saylor. This is another correction. He talks about the correction. Then he says, by the way, I know nobody is interested in this story, but my allegation on November the 11th that Pfizer halted its processing of vaccine clinical trial results from late October to the day after the election so that it wouldn't know that it was obligated by its published clinical trial protocol to count and publish the results until after the election, thus almost certainly depriving Trump of an early November surprise that likely would have won a re-election, has not been disproved. Well, there's a greater truth there. And the greater truth is, despite the fact that Trump gave Pfizer and the other drug companies blanket immunity during the warp speed drive to make these new viruses, that the bigger truth is that Trump is orange bad man and that he's worse than Hitler. So if a vaccine, the results have to be delayed for a couple of weeks in order to influence the election, that is the moral thing to do. Is it not? From American Greatness, Liz Shield. The Beltway tabloid, known as the Washington Post, has issued a correction regarding a news outlet. Yes, indeed. Alex Thompson says, real bad this quote was and is still everywhere. You mean like the one where Trump praised the neo-Nazis at Charlottesville, Virginia? Remember that one? That the media is still trotting out, even though it's been completely debunked, and it is easy to debunk because they have the words of Trump on video. Yeah. But they keep repeating lies. They keep repeating it. But again, obviously in the service of a higher truth. The Washington Post, of course, was the outlet that broke the Watergate story. And they used to say in those days, follow the money, right? Well, let's follow the money with the Washington Post. Since the 1950s, the Washington Post has been a CIA asset. If you don't believe me, you can read about Operation Mockingbird. This is not really that obscure. But 7 years ago, Jeff Bezos owns Amazon. Jeff Bezos does not like Donald Trump. Donald Trump does not like Jeff Bezos. The CIA does not like Donald Trump. We know because of their involvement in the Russiagate hoax. And we know because of all of the, grim statements made by Brennan, the former head of the CIA, who voted for the Communist Party of America in the 1976 presidential election. And it was 7 years ago, Amazon got paid $700 million for cloud storage by the CIA. But in its latest grant, the CIA decided to go to Microsoft. And Amazon has taken this to court, saying that Microsoft should be disqualified for a $10 billion contract because Donald Trump didn't like Amazon and didn't like the Washington Post. Of course, the Washington Post is now owned by Amazon. So this disqualifies the awarding of this contract. Yes, follow the money. Hang on. I believe I have a story about that. Let me see if I do here. Oh no, I'm not going to read that. It's just I passed that point. I passed that point. So yeah, let's move on here. And I've got a story from Twitter. Before we get into the collateral damage from Megan Mertz and Piers Morgan, and I suspect there's going to be a lot of collateral damage there because some people didn't rush to the defense of Megan Mertz and her hapless, witless husband, Prince Harry. Oh, yes. Sherman McCoy posting his L's online. Used to think that we could win this thing by winning the culture war, but given my conversations with normies, we already almost have. According to some polls, 80% of Americans hate PC culture. We therefore need to use state power to de-wokeify the USA. Here's how. 1, fire useless agitator professors from public universities, cut funding to their programs. 2, ban writing grants to the above for private universities. 3, ban CRT trainings inside the federal government like Trump did. 4, do the same for state governments. 5, sign executive order for the government not to do business with contractors that engage in CRT. That's critical race theory, by the way. 6, during the next economic crisis, bail out banks on condition they give an equity stake to taxpayers. Use this to stop CRT in corporate America. 7, do not accredit universities unless they make all students complete a Western civilization program. 8, make political opinions a protected class unless you're working on a political campaign. And that the part of me that used to be a libertarian is aghast at proposing such an aggressive campaign. But the truth is we already live in a police state where you can be fired for wrong thing. We need to dismantle the thought police and take political, economic, and cultural power away from the leaders. By the way, just as important to all the measures I listed above, create an off-ramp for normal people involved in left extremism. If you don't, we'll be left with a chunk of the population with nothing to lose. This is ultimately why I think the woke elites will fail, because they seek to punish ordinary people. I think those are good ideas, but I have an idea. It's not an original idea, which could be better. It comes from Saul Alinsky, who dedicated his book, Rules for Radicals, to the devil himself. And they say Machiavelli was a bad man. Make them live by their own rules. They talk diversity. They talk, Black people, people of color, BIPOC people, Asian people. They talk gay, lesbian, alphabet people, trans, non-binary, etc. Make them staff their organizations with those people. Make them staff their boards with those people. Make them staff their management with those people. Start yelling at the old white men to leave. Oh, you care about all this? Well, then resign and insist that your positions be taken over by a female BIPOC, preferably one who is an immigrant and non-binary. You say that you're woke? Well, show it. Anyone can send out tweets or post messages on Facebooks or hang a rainbow flag outside their corporate offices. But this is all window dressing. If you really believe that your companies are not representative of the way we are now, they don't look like America, we'll make them look like America right now. Also, of course, you have been lecturing us about, the sacrifices that need to be made by the old stock people. It's equality is not enough. Equity is necessary. Well, let's see some equity. Okay. If there's 13% Black people in the United States, well, 30% of your executives need to be Black. Okay. If alphabet people are 10% of the American population, considering all that they have suffered and continue to have suffered, just like Black people, alphabet people should be 30% of your executives. And don't let up on this, because what possible answer do they have for this? Oh, this is going to take time. Oh, that's what they've always said. Oh, no, we can't abolish slavery right now. This is going to take time. The slave owners are going to have to be compensated for their losses. Oh, well, that there's certain, what are you saying, that these people are not capable of doing these jobs? Once again, they have no possible answer to this. None whatsoever. And the insistence upon this must be relentless. Okay, so back to collateral damage. Leah Remini, and I'd hope that I'd seen and heard the last of that woman. Nasty in face, nasty in nature. It's from the New York Post, page 6. Embattled the talk co-host Sharon Osbourne, called former colleague Julie Chen Asian epithet, I'll say, and lesbian actress Sarah Gilbert, lesbian epithet, I'll say. An explosive new report claims. During the CBS show's first season, Osborne lashed out at her then co-host because she was angry that Chen was reportedly trying to take center stage. And Gilbert, also executive producer, was doing nothing about it. Sources and ex-colleague actress Leah Remini told journalist Yashar Ali, that guy, he's certainly totally legit. I mean, what the F does Asian physiognomy slur thinks she is? She shouldn't be pillow talking with her boss. Yes, this is referring to Chen and her husband, Len Moonves, who was at the head of CBS at the time. If you want to have a laugh, or maybe frighten yourself, do an image search for Julie Chen and type in plastic surgery, okay? And look at the before and after pictures of Julie Chen. Julie Chen is not a particularly attractive woman now. You should have seen her before. Oh my. Remini claimed that Osborne also trashed Holly Robinson Peete even before the show's season kicked off with the 21 Jump Street star as a co-host in 2010. Remini alleged Osborne told her at lunch about how she had previously appeared with Robinson Peete on the Celebrity Apprentice 3 show and said Holly wasn't a good person, not to trust her, and that we should find another black person who is funny. Osborne is currently locked in a war of words with Robinson Peete, who accused her over the weekend of saying she was too ghetto for the show, a claim Osborne has vehemently denied. Remini, who appeared on the first season of The Talk, alleged that Osborne also would refer to Remini as two slurs for Italians. Let's put it that way. Osborne's publicist, Howard Bragman, told Page Six in a statement, the only thing worse than a disgruntled former employee is a disgruntled former talk show host. Now, oh, yes, kind of burying the lead here. Well, what is this? Paragraph 15 or something, where we finally get around to mentioning Piers Morgan. You see, Osborne defended Piers Morgan, and you can't do that. She got heat on the show March 10th for defending British talk show host Piers Morgan after he quit his own show amid a flap over his comments about Meghan Markle, saying that she didn't understand what he uttered. That's racist. Yeah, okay. The claims come as the talk went on temporary hiatus after a heated on-air dispute between Osborne and current co-hosts, including Cheryl Underwood last week. CBS announced Tuesday it was extending the show's pause of live episodes till at least next week. In a way, this is a good thing, isn't it? I mean, I want to see this on The View, too. I want The View to become so toxic that it goes on permanent hiatus. I want all these shows to go on permanent hiatus. Osborne tweeted a general apology over her comments Friday, writing to anyone of color that I offended and or to anyone that feels confused or let down by what I said. I am truly sorry. Don't apologize. Don't ever apologize. You look, we know this. We've seen it so many times. She dug her own grave when she apologized. If you are going to say something that is controversial, particularly of, well, I don't know, a racial or gender area, in that area, you better be prepared to defend it. Otherwise, think before you speak and then belt up, because you are only making it worse for the rest of us. Oh, here's some good news. Again, the Alinsky principle. India says pioneering female president of Oxford Students' Union was the victim of racism after she was forced to quit after racist social media posts by cancel culture mob. Subramanyam Jaishankar told MPs he would talk to UK about Rashmi Samant. What country are we in here, by the way? So let's what did this person say? Oh, Holocaust pun, June 17th. The memorial casts a hollow dream of the past atrocities and deeds. Get it? Hollow casts? Following a post from Malaysia in which she used the caption Ching Chang, one Chinese student told Cherwell it was awful that Samant appeared to show no remorse for the use of a phrase which has been used to make fun of Chinese people for our whole lives. That's not the phrase exactly. And this Indian woman said, oh, I was talking about my vegetarianism. Yeah. In an Instagram post, she wrote, women, trans women, and men. By separating women from trans women, she was accused of transphobia. At a union debate uploaded to YouTube, Samant commented on Oriel College's statue of Cecil Rhodes. Quote, if an organization would come up to you and give you a heap of money to set up a scholarship and say, I want to name this the Hitler Fund or the Hitler Scholarship, would you do it? Unquote. Oh dear. See, but these people are being forced to live by their own rules. Oh no, but these were just jokes that I made 10 years ago or 5 years ago. There's no such thing as jokes. And the fact that you made them 5 years ago or 10 years ago is irrelevant because you proved yourself to be a racist. And there's no cure. There's no cure for that. Is there a cure for Islamophobia? This is a story from December of last year. Publisher cancels Julie Burchill's book contract after Islamophobic Twitter row when she accused Muslim journalist of worshiping a pedophile. Burchill, 61, accused, I'm not going to mention the journalist's name here. You can find it easily enough. Here's what happened. Julie Burchill, who I've mentioned in this space previously, she's been well known for over 40 years in Britain. She started as a rock journalist at the New Musical Express, then became a columnist, has worked for various papers. She was an extraordinarily good-looking young woman. And then she became quite fat, and then a lesbian. I don't know which came first. Anyway, she had a book called Welcome to the Woke Trials, How Identity Killed Progressive Politics. And it was going to be released this month by Little Brown, who was owned by the French concern Hachette, which stands for free speech, by the way, except that it doesn't. See, Burchill had defended a controversial British writer who writes for The Spectator called Rod Little, who had said that he could never be a teacher because he couldn't trust himself not to shag the students. And he clarified that he meant, 4'10", meaning they'd have to be, like 16 years of age or older. And so Little was attacked. Well, actually, Burchill came to Little's defense, and then Burchill was attacked by this Muslim journalist, essentially saying that she was defending pedophilia. And then Burchill turned on her, saying, how old was the Prophet's wife? Aisha. How old was she? Well, apparently this child was 9 or 10 years old. Am I still allowed to say that? Is that Islamophobic? Is that a hate crime to mention the age of the Prophet's wife, and that it might imply a certain tendency? I'm just, reporting what happened here. I need answers, as they say on Red Letter Media. So it got worse for Julie Burchill. She was sued, and she made substantial payment, an unreserved apology, which sounded like it was signed with a gun pointed to her head. Hey, you remember what Enoch Powell said about the whip hand in Britain and who was going to hold the whip hand? I think that Enoch Powell was definitely proved right. Wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you say? Okay, what do we got? What do we got here next? Oh, yes. Okay, I'm going to mention at IO Caesar. I cannot tell you how glad I am to be able to put the record straight and lift the lid on what actually went on back in December. It's vital that we have an honest conversation about the nastier aspects of our media culture and try to make it better for everyone. Honest conversation with a Muslim about the Prophet in today's Britain. Ho, ho. Very satirical. When people say, you know this all, you people know this already, right? We've got to have a conversation. We've got to have an honest conversation. In other words, I speak, you listen, then you repeat what I said or else. That's what they mean by a conversation. If you hear one of these people say that we should have a conversation, just run. Run like hell as fast as you can. Tell them you forgot something in the oven or something, or you just got a text that your apartment had been flooded or was on fire or something like that. You know, whatever works. Speaking of the joys of, here we go. No, this is a Bloomberg story, and Bloomberg is determined to enrage me by not allowing me to click through to it. I don't want to do one of those CAPTCHA things. I don't want to recognize bicycles. Have you ever had this problem? It says click on all the pictures of bicycles. Well, you know, bicycles often look a lot like motorcycles, which are not bicycles. And sometimes they'll just show you part of a bicycle, like some spokes or boats. Yeah. I think, okay, if there's water, there must be a boat. Otherwise, they wouldn't be showing me water. Well, sometimes boats are on dry land, you know, but I digress. This is from Bloomberg, and it is from Saritha Rai. How big tech is importing India's caste legacy to Silicon Valley. Sounds great, doesn't it? Graduates from the Indian Institutes of Technology are highly sought after by employers. They can also bring problems from home. Problems from India? That's not possible. India is a paradise on earth. On a sunny day in early 2017, Sundar Pichai, Alphabet Inc.'s chief executive officer, returned to his alma mater, the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur in West Bengal, to speak before 3,500 students, welcomed as the rock star leader of the world's most innovative company. He reminisced about skipping classes and meeting his college girlfriend, now his wife. He also pitched Google to the soon-to-be graduates in attendance. How many wanted to work there? The interviewer asked. Hundreds of hands went up. Wow, maybe we should open a campus in Kharagpur, Pichai joked. Caste system. You know about the caste system? Here's how it works. In Hinduism, they have various castes. At the top are the Brahmins. At the bottom are the Dalits, formerly called untouchable. Yeah, untouchables had no rights. Stay out of the way of Brahmins, like even out of their sight, okay? And, you know, if bad things happen to you in life, for instance, upper caste people do bad things to lower caste people, the lower caste people deserve it. Yes, they deserve it. You know why? Because of bad karma. Because they had done bad things in previous lifetimes. This definitely sounds like the type of religious belief which should be imported to the West. Doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Caste in India speaks as race does in America to centuries of social, cultural, and economic divisions. It does rather more than that, actually. On campus, this is IIT's campus, students are surrounded by and in some cases participate in a culture of discrimination, bullying, and segregation that targets fellow pupils from India's scheduled castes, also known as Dalits. There's 140 million of them, I believe. The IITs are notoriously cutthroat, starting with the admissions process. Some 2.2 million people have registered to take the 2021 entrance exam to vie for roughly 16,000 slots. About 15% of those are allotted to students from the scheduled castes, and another 7.5 to applicants from the scheduled tribes. Indigenous people who face marginalization and whose status has also been formalized by the Constitution. Caste-based resentment at the IIT can run high. Dalit IIT graduates who've managed to land jobs in the US say that such attitudes can be found here too. Oh, there's the attitude. My dear Corona, in every sphere, SCSTs get first preference, so if you can, please look into the same. Last year, a Dalit graduate at IIT Bombay filed suit in the US against Cisco Systems, Inc., and two of his fellow alums, saying he'd experienced caste-based discrimination at their hands, while the three of them were employed at the company. The accompanying publicity prompted a wave of complaints about caste discrimination in American tech, allegations that seemed to blindside the industry. No, it had never occurred to the people in the computer industry in the United States that if they were bringing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Indians to America, they were bringing India to America. And Microsoft has the same problem now with a caste system, with Brahmins running the show at Microsoft, and Brahmins now coming to run the city of Seattle itself and its environs. So Cisco is engaged in a court battle now, where Cisco is standing up for the caste system, the implementation of a caste system in America. Aren't these wonderful people, these people in tech? They will do anything for a buck, won't they? Anything at all. Oh, let's talk finally about cross-stitching, specifically feminist cross-stitching. Yeah, you didn't know about feminist cross-stitching. This isn't your grandma's cross-stitching. You know, whenever I hear that trope, this isn't your grandmother's, etc., this isn't your grandfather's, etc., I think, could we still have, you know, what grandma and grandpa had? Anyway, this is from hgtv.com. Creative genius Stephanie Rohr, author of Feminist Cross-Stitch. Meet the feminist crafter herself and show off your skills with free downloadable patterns. Stephanie Rohr, known as Steph X Stitch in the crafting world, is empowering women everywhere, one stitch at a time. How does cross-stitching empower anyone? Stephanie has been cross-stitching since she was 7 years old, but it wasn't until about 10 years ago that she started a business to sell her pieces. More recently, she began crafting feminist, subversive designs that landed her a book deal. Feminist Cross-Stitch is her first book filled with 40 patterns ranging from easy to expert, polite to full-on rage. If you're a first-time cross-stitcher, don't fret. An introduction to the basics greets you within the first few pages like an encouraging best friend cheering you on. Here's one of her stitches. There's a crown at the top and an upside down at the crown at the bottom, and the middle it says Yas. Get it? Yas, slay queen. Edgy stuff. Stephanie says, I started my online business in 2010, and it was more in line with traditional cross-stitch designs and patterns. But it was really the 2016 presidential election that inspired my feminist patterns. They would sell more and more, and people would request more of those patterns. At the first Women's March of 2016, I blew up my design, A Women's Place is in the Revolution, and put it on a poster, and people really liked it. Okay. Strong women, may we be them, know them, raise them. It's just so banal. So very banal. Yeah. We make things that are banal and we call them subversive. But wait. Julie Jackson of Subversive Cross-Stitch. What, there's more than one of these women? Okay. Remember when knitting became feminist? And here's more on that. Okay. Here is more on that. If I can find this story. It's a New York Times story, so I have to open it in a different browser. Okay, this is from Christine Hauser at the New York Times today. And remember when the New York Times was a serious newspaper? It's essentially an ad for this woman's book. Feminist Cross-Stitch, A Woman's Place is in the Revolution, 40 bold and fierce patterns Do people still say that? Fierce? By Stephanie Rohr. For years, stories of social revolutions have been told with needle and thread. You are really pushing it, Christine Hauser. In the 1980s, a massive quilt adorned with the names of people who had died from AIDS was used to spotlight government inaction on the disease. A typical lie. The government jumped in with both feet on AIDS going back to 1984. But never mind that. In 2014, women got out their knitting needles and started the yarn mission after the killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. No one has ever heard of that. Pink hats were fashioned into protest icons for the Women's March in Washington in 2017. Aren't they called pussy hats? That's what they were called. Does the New York Times not like that phrase? And these hats were revolutionary because, I knew what a vulva looked like before the hats. Didn't teach me anything. Hunkered down because of the pandemic, craft activists have recently drawn inspiration from challenges to equality, social justice, and gender rights. But last month, Michaels, the large crafts retailer in the United States, became an unlikely source of controversy when it ordered stores to trash a book of cross-stitch patterns with feminist messages, some of which contained salty language. As Michael's locations were stocking the book for Women's History Month, this month, at least 2 employees noticed that 4 of the 40 patterns contained a specific obscenity, according to the company. Or you could just look at the book to count how many obscenities, New York Times. They told their managers. The corporation's headquarters took action, ordering Michael stores in the U.S. to remove the books, which were tossed in the trash. It is our policy not to sell products with the F word in or on it in our stores, Michael said. It is not in line with our brand, and that policy will not change. The removal quickly led to backlash in online craft forums. Some called for a boycott of the store or said they would purchase the book to support its author, Stephanie Rohr. There's something very apt about throwing feminism in the trash because you realize some of the words make you uncomfortable. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking some words that would make feminists uncomfortable, but I don't think that I could put together a book and sell them at Michael's or on Amazon or anywhere else for that matter. Michael said it objected only to the swear words, pointed to concerns that a customer could pick up a copy without realizing it contained curses. Had this same book not had the 4 explicit patterns in it, it would still be on display in our stores as planned, Michael said. The retailer apologized for throwing the books in the trash and said it had ordered additional copies to sell on its website. This is a win-win for Stephanie Rohr, isn't it? 2 bites of the apple. With the disclaimer, warning contains adult language. The company said it would no longer discard books. The book includes patterns that use the same 4-letter word to tell you what to do with internalized misogyny. You're not going to tell us what that word is? Or how feminist to be. Women don't owe you shit, reads another. Charming, charming people. Curse-free designs include slogans like smash the patriarchy. Cats, not catcalls. What, are you suggesting here that women who knit or do cross-stitching are the kind of women who live alone and drink wine from a box and have cats who crap into a box? Are you suggesting that? Carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white man. Other patterns include phrases that gained political notoriety during the Trump years. Resist, nasty women, and bad hombre. Okay, so I managed to find some examples of this woman's art. And, okay, come on. Why isn't this opening up here? I need pictures. Just give me a second here. It gave me pictures before. Let's try a different browser. Anyway, there's a lot of obscenity here, a lot of childish obscenity. Carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white man. Yeah, mediocre white men, they rule the world. Man, they just show so much confidence. Do these people really believe that? I don't know. Maybe when they got the cat on their lap and the knitting in their hands and the box wine within arm's length, they believe this. Maybe they do. What a sad, sad life these people live. So let's have a final look at the chat. Hickman Warrior says, I am wrong, indefensible. I am Vimin Ellen Reddy. Yes, I remember that song. She was Australian, Helen Reddy was. People seem to make this song was a big hit. It's not interesting musically. It's not catchy at all. But such were the times. This was what, in the mid-70s? Mama says Biden can't remember what he said a year ago. Okay, we've seen that before. And KMG, please. Interact password. Oh, okay. The question would be, where do I live? So that's an easy one to figure out. You can look at my Twitter account. Well, the answer is Victoria. I don't know why. I don't know why I just did that. HIB positive transgender says, okay. See, I start at the bottom and move up to the top, which doesn't work. But if I start at the top and scroll down, then the additional comments, they push what I was reading up over the top. So it's no longer there. It's an insoluble problem, people. Hikma Warrior is referring to Joe Slovo, who, if I recall, was the African National Congress activist, a communist from Lithuania. Okay. New York Times are avoiding the pussy hat to be more inclusive with those with lady penises. No, you're quite right. You're quite right. I hadn't thought about that. I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago when I first heard this phrase. It had to do with I think it was a murder in Berkeley, California. One woman killed another woman, and one of them was a male to female transsexual, and the word female or feminine penis was used. And I thought, no, that never happened, because that would be crazy. But everyone believes in it now. I mean, how could you not believe in it now? Okay, that's the show for today. What's coming up? On Theater Thursday, I'm going to be talking about the Valley of the Dolls movies, Valley of the Dolls, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. The first one is a big budget Hollywood film, which was really, the times had changed so much by the time this movie came out. It's kind of ridiculously dated, or was even ridiculously dated at the time. Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is an attempt to update the story of the milieu. It came out, 3 years later, but it is ridiculously dated as well, and it was ridiculously dated at the time. It seems to me getting Roger Ebert to write a screenplay about what all the, out there young people are thinking and how they're acting. No, it doesn't work. March 25th, I'm talking about Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend on April the 1st. For Easter, I'm talking about Eric Rohmer's Tale of the Grail, Percival Le Gallois, Percival the Welshman. On April the 8th, a contemporary film, The Vast of Night, from 2019, Andrew Patterson. On April the 15th, documentary, the latest documentary, this year's documentary from Adam Curtis, Can't Get You Out of My Head. On the book club, I'm talking this Friday about Tom Wolfe's novel about Miami, Back to Blood. March 26th, The Coming of Neo-Feudalism by Joel Kotkin. Again, for Easter, April the 2nd, Evelyn Waugh's biography of Monsignor Ronald Knox, who single-handedly translated the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament. On April the 9th, P.D. James's The Children of Men. And on April 16th, Stephen Sukup's The Dictatorship of Woke Capital. And on March 22nd, Music Monday, I'm going to be talking about so-called authentic classical performance, or as I believe Pinkas Zuckerman dubbed them, the vegetarians. I will be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. If you like the show or any part of it, I would appreciate it if you would click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not done so already. If you would like to make a donation to this live stream, which would be very much appreciated, well, a whole lot. I could really use it. My PayPal account is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Once again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you are in Canada, a donation to the live stream can be made via Interac to kevingrace@shaw.ca. And as always, I leave you with this. In these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear viewers and listeners, manage to forge a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.